Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Pivoted Success podcast. I'm your host, Jared Goldsmith, and hopefully soon we'll be joined by our co-host, Sean Cochran from TCC Canada. Today, we're very pleased to be welcoming Linda Babulic from Zest Your Life. Linda, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Jared.
So, Linda, let's talk. You and I have known each other on and off for many years through the various events here in town in Ottawa. But many of our listeners, our viewers, don't really know much about your background. Can you please tell us a little bit about who you are? What's your business organization all about?
Well, I have a very extensive resume. I've worked with people from all walks of life, from the Right Honourable Kim Campbell, the first female Prime Minister of Canada. She was a hoot to work with. When she was at the Department of Justice and she was the minister there, I had the honor of working with her. All the way through, I worked for Correctional Service of Canada. I established a volunteer program at a prison up in Muskoka. So I worked with inmates that are doing life sentences. Most people don't realize that people going into our Correctional Service of Canada, the inmates go in and they're between 23 and 35, and most of them can't read. So the volunteer program was to get volunteers in to show them how to read, teach them some of the basic life skills. I'm really proud of that program. It now had, last check, thousands of volunteers helping inmates so that they wouldn't be going back to a life of crime. I've also ran a court reporting firm. I worked on Parliament Hill a couple of times for a couple of different ministers. And I moved back to Ottawa. So I'd been here before. I moved away for 17 years. And 7.5 years ago, I moved back. And I think you were one of the first people that I met when I moved back, because everybody said, you've got to go to eSAX. That's where it's happening. So I think you were right at the beginning of it. So that's where my resume is long. I went on my first vision quest in 2003. And it was during that time of shamanic studies that I realized that I'm here to be of service. And I was a travel agent. And that was my big thing, was being of service. And at the shamanic, I learned that it's to be of service in love and beauty. And that's what my mission is.
That's a fabulous mission. And now you're writing books?
Yes, I have a #1 international bestseller called Zest Your Life, A Taste of Inner Wisdom. My programs are based on the book. And what a lot of people don't realize is my corporate training programs, Fundamentals of Leadership. I did a lot of work with the auto parts suppliers to Honda in the Alliston area, just north of Toronto. What a lot of people don't realize is those programs got incorporated in here. You get effective communication, problem solving, conflict resolution. I made it a more personal tone when I put it in my book.
Oh, that's fabulous. So people can absolutely relate to that. That's really nice. And speaking about relating, one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast, Linda, as you know, is to help expand the knowledge base and resources to let people know there have been people like yourself who've adapted quite well during COVID. So we want to hear about some of those stories. Now, Linda, how were you personally affected by COVID?
Well, certainly not seeing my family was really difficult. But apart from that, my life didn't change very much. Our daughter lives 4 doors away. And at the beginning of the shutdown, she brought our groceries, she brought our food. And then we were able to I don't do the shopping. My husband does all the shopping. So it really didn't change that much. What I found, though, was the social piece, the eSAX, because, I loved it. And a lot of the other networking that I did, that's the pieces I missed. The hugs. I missed the hugs. Yeah. I missed doing the Becks. And it's that personal piece. So I flipped over to doing a lot of online stuff. I belong to a group called FemCity, and they're a global group. I'm a lifetime global member. And they have chapters. And I used to go to the live chapters here in Ottawa. And we flipped that to Zoom calls. So I've gotten to meet people from all over the world. We have an affiliation now with an organization in India. I think I was telling you, I was on a podcast a couple of weeks ago. She has 100,000 listeners. I'm scheduled for another podcast that's based in India next week. So it's given me a chance to go broader and to really anchor down my programs. I was doing them on Facebook, as in Facebook groups, and now I've been able to put them all on a platform for easier access for everyone.
I think that's a really valid point, because so many people are realizing their reach might not be their little town anymore. It's global. Yeah, and I mean, having a podcast for at least 100,000 viewers, subscribers, that's something else. We'll get there one of these days, Linda, with more people like yourself on it.
She didn't start with 100,000. And one of her listeners actually contacted me over the weekend, and he listened to the podcast. So it's really interesting to see how your words and what you say can impact so many people around you. That's why I take it as a personal responsibility to only be positive when I'm out. Nobody needs to see me if I'm ever miserable, which doesn't happen very often.
That's true. You're always with a smile on your face. Now let's talk about, during COVID, yeah, things slowed down for most people, but what were you doing behind the scenes? Like we were chatting earlier about, you were taking some of those courses and putting them online. Like, can you talk a little bit about what you realized back when COVID started, how you can continue to stay in business by doing that?
Absolutely. And it's still, much of my business comes through referrals. And I was standing at eSAX once, and somebody introduced me and said, she's very zesty. And he said, I need some of that. I took his card, followed up, and we worked together for 6 months after that.
Wow, great.
So I've been keeping up by getting the word out of what I'm doing. To people can't hire you if they don't know what you do. So I provide one-on-one coaching. I have my book, of course, which was a big part of my victory right after the shutdown, because my publisher never paid me any royalties, and it came out in 2015. I was able, because I had a hybrid contract with him, able to get my distribution rights back. So if anybody out there is writing a book, they'll tell you, you keep the copyright, but you don't have the distribution rights. And my contract stated that I did. So it was great. And I put it on Amazon. That's, that's all a learning curve. How are we going to work that? And the royalties now are pouring in, which I'm very happy for. My courses online, letting people know that what I used to do live, I am now doing online. So it's Powerful First Impressions is one that everybody needs to have. It's the perfect opportunity right now to make another first impression, because we're not the same people as we were a year ago or 6 months ago or 2 years ago. The last time you walked into a room with someone, you were very different than you are now. I think we've all changed at the cellular level. So it's really important for us to be clear on what image do we want to put out there, and how do you put that out there? How do you ask the right questions? How do you engage people in conversation? All
so
those
do you think,
things.
Linda, that a lot of this content that you're talking about, that you wrote books about, is a great way to learn to become a better person or a different person, let's say, when you see them in person again? So now it's time for self-reflection, and you could learn from your past. What would you
And sometimes I was in Peru with my shamanic teacher, and it was a real turning point in my life. And she said to me, she said, Linda, you're going to have impact. And I thought, I'm getting a big compliment from the teacher. And this was 11 years ago, 11, 12 years ago. And she said, you have to decide what that impact's going to be. And it was like, oh, that's a whole different story. Like, do you want to walk into a room full of self-importance and arrogance? Do you want to walk into a room as a victim? Nobody's talking to me. Or do you want to stand in your power and confidence and to know your intent when you walk into the room? Just like I had an intent for this podcast. I have an intent for everything that I do. And we need to set that before we walk into the room, before we click that button to say hello.
And that's a great lead-in, because you have helped others to adapt during COVID by doing exactly what you've been doing for years, taking that wisdom and knowledge out of your head and putting it on paper or online to help others.
Absolutely. And I've been talking to corporate groups that have women's councils, especially I just happen to fall in with people who work for organizations like ExxonMobil, very male dominated with few women in it. How do they navigate in a man's world without coming on like too strong and not being wimpy? So that's part of the coaching that I take them through, where to sit in a room, how to walk into a room, how to address someone if they talk over you. All of those things are important aspects. And they're using it in all of the relationships, because once you learn how to ask the right question and how to listen, you're going to apply that to everything, whether it's your one-on-one relationships at home, at work, with your children. They're life skills.
Those are very important skills. And it could be very, very scary for women in a male-dominated industry to speak up, because they might be worried about the repercussions. And check your book out. That's going to be a fantastic. And you said they could be found on Amazon?
Yes. Yeah, Amazon.ca and Amazon. Now, there are resellers that are selling the book, and there's nothing I can do about that. But go to the lowest price. That one's mine. I made sure I priced it a little bit lower than my resellers.
Oh, thank you, Linda. And for those watching, you can find it at Zest Your Life, Linda Babulic. Now, Linda, let's talk about, what are you most excited about? Let's put your future hat on. Let's talk about 6 months or a year from now. Will things open up? Maybe, maybe not. But what are you excited about?
I'm really excited about connecting with women and giving them the tools that they need so that they can really step into their leadership and step into their power. Because I believe when we do that, we can build a better world. And we have certainly seen through COVID that women are stepping into their leadership like they never did before. And we need to see more of that. We need more leaders. I mean, look around in the political scene in Canada and the US. Nobody wants to run. There's quality people. I remember when I worked on Parliament Hill with Alan Rock and so many other fabulous members. And nobody wants to do that anymore because of social media and the anger and the nastiness that goes on. So there's other ways to step into our leadership in our communities and make a difference.
Yeah, yeah. And what about, do you plan on adjusting some of your speaking points, some of your workshops to address the issue of isolation?
Absolutely. And one of the big cornerstones that I teach is the codependency triangle. And that's you're either a victim or a rescuer or a persecutor. And often we can fall into that victim mode where we're expecting somebody to rescue us, but then we get mad when people keep rescuing us and we persecute them. And we can bounce around those three corners on that triangle that fast. And we need to step out of that and step into a more empowering place where we coach, we mentor, we listen to each other. But as long as we think we're victims, then it's very depressing for us. In fact, I had a conversation with my sister, my older sister, in the beginning of the lockdown. And she said, "This is awful. We're locked up." And I said, "No, we're not." She's in her 80s. And I said, "You're not locked up." I said, "You have no bombs dropping on your head. You have a fridge full of food, and you have people who love you." Her son just lives 2 blocks away too. So it's really, then she went, "Oh yeah, I never thought of it that way." I mean, look at some of the countries that they're in a bad way. There's terrible things going on. We don't have that going on here. And most of the people that are going to listen to your podcast can step into the gratitude of everything that I have, not look at what I don't have. I'm so grateful every day for what I have, because as a child, I never expected that I would be where I am today.
Right, right. Linda, we go to a lot of events, or we used to go to a lot of events in person. How would you deal with somebody say, "Hey, Linda, I love your concept, but you should be doing blah, 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 blah"? How do you deal with somebody? Like, is that, you touched on it earlier, is is it seemed as confrontational? Is it you accept the feedback?
Well, very often I'll just apply a sense of humor to it. I remember someone saying to me, but you have to be zesty all the time. That's your brand. And I said, actually, no, because that's not very authentic. I'm not always zesty. Most of the time, you know, you can ask my husband, I get out of bed and it's good morning and I'm a cheerful person. But sometimes things start to get on my nerves too. And I just say, I appreciate what you've said. This is a great one. I appreciate what you've said. I'll take it under advisement.
Oh, that's
very non-confrontational. Now, remember, I teach juice effective conversation techniques.
Yeah.
And that's one of them. You know, so tell me more. Tell me more is also a really good response. Tell me more. So what makes you think that? Explain to me how that would work. I'm curious. So if you keep up your curiosity level, and you have to remember that if your heart is open, nobody's going to attack you because all they feel is that radiation of love coming from you. I have an event tonight, actually. I'm meeting, I just put a couple of posters out online with a friend of mine, and we're hosting a group of women at Johnny Canucks. So we'll see how it goes, and they're happy to come. It's a nice day. We'll be on the patio.
Oh, how lovely. That's really nice. Yeah. And you know, you said that, you know, you're zesty most of the time, but it's all about the branding. I don't wear the hat to bed. People don't see it, but I get that asked once in a while. So do you take a shower with it? Like, yeah, I have a shower fedora. No, I don't. Funny. So Linda, let's talk about your future of the business, like the writing, the consulting. Now, we talked a bit about your personal side. I mean, it's a little hard to differentiate the two, but are you writing another book these days? Like, do you have some other topics of speaking that you're going to be specializing in?
What really interests me is to open up my Zest Wisdom Circle, which is the circle that I had for women, and we used to meet live. And I'm going to be working more on that. And it may be, I don't think it's not going to start as a book. And this did not start as a book. I workshopped. Every word in here was workshopped because I wanted to see that it would make a difference in people's lives. So I'm going to be opening up the Zest Wisdom Circle again. I did a workshop for a large group of women, and it was called Womb Power, Creating Resilience. And she wanted me to talk about creating resilience. And even though you're a man, you came from a womb. So we all have that womb space, which is our primal connection to our ancestors. And that's what I really love, talking about those aspects and how to be your authentic self, how to step into your power, how to control your own time and agenda. All of those are pieces that are covered in this book. It's called The 7 Secrets of Women with Zest. But quite frankly, I don't think I covered it adequately in the book. So I want to cover more of that so that we can have that, you know, consciously direct your thoughts and feelings. All of those pieces are hugely important. And those are going to be the sections that I'm going to be focusing on. They may come out as mini ebooks so that people could step into that knowledge, but I'll walk people through it.
Well, you talk about being authentic and being your true self. I've been saying for years, especially when you're meeting people, at least for the first time, people see through fake. And if they see that you're not genuine, like people can tell, right? Like we've been around people our whole lives. If somebody's, you know, and we could talk, have a whole other section on body language, the tone of voice, and all that stuff. People can see that. And if you're not authentic, what type of credibility are you building?
Yeah. And you know what's really funny about me that I've discovered in just the last couple of months is when I have this conversation with you, a podcast, or I do a Facebook Live, I'm me. Like you've met me in person. I'm exactly like this. But when I have to do a recording to do the welcome video on my website or the welcome video on my YouTube channel, it took me 29 takes. And quite frankly, I still don't like it. I go right into my corporate stiff mood. Welcome to my YouTube channel. It's like, who is that woman? It's the funniest thing. If it's a recording, then I get all stiff. If it's this, I'm fine. So I'm going to have to just put your picture on my screen
Yeah.
because I'm welcoming you to my YouTube channel.
Oh, Linda, I'd be honored. That would be fabulous. Thank you for that. That's very kind. But yeah, there's some people, I just, very structured and straight and talk very properly. And others, I just feel a bit more relaxed with. I might slip in the odd joke here and there, and the thing about my fedora earlier. Um, Now, Linda, you talked about zesty wisdom earlier. I love all this branding. Now, let's talk. Are you able to share some of that wisdom for others on how they can adjust and adapt during COVID?
Well, it starts here, doesn't it? And that's your mindset. And for me, as I mentioned, I meditate every morning. And I was outside. I love meditating outside by my pool. And it's watching the little things. It's watching the hummingbird that came to greet me the other day, or the butterfly that's in my nasturtiums. Or today, it was the squirrel in the yard behind me completely going nuts with the oak tree because they're nuts flying everywhere. So it's just seeing those little things. Take a walk, look out your window, take a breath, and just meditate for a moment on the world that you have and appreciate what you have as a gift. And certainly I do the 6-phase meditation with Vishen Lakhiani from Mind Valley. And I've been doing that for years. I started it sitting on a beach in Jamaica when I read the Codes of the Extraordinary Mind. I think that's what his book is called. And the meditation is in there. So number one, meditate. Take 1 minute for yourself to just sit and watch the trees or the rain or whatever. And when you connect with nature, then it calms you down. And nature's not always calm. Sometimes I used to think I wanted harmony. I used to live in the country on 8 acres. And one day I was looking out, there was a raging storm. And I thought, harmony isn't what I thought it was. And nobody knows that better than you as a musician. It was like, oh, nature has highs and lows, and that's harmony. An orchestra, a band playing, you have to have the highs and the lows. And so appreciate the highs and appreciate the lows. I was speaking in Montreal, and a question people often ask is, how do you have balance in your life? Well, picture a teeter-totter. And that's not very much fun, is it? That's balance. Nobody's going anywhere. But is it the fun in being at the bottom when somebody else is on the top and you can kick really hard and they almost lose their balance and then you both laugh? Or is it being at the top of that thrill of being higher than anybody? That's the balance. So appreciate the highs and appreciate the lows. And COVID has been a low, but let's appreciate it for what it is. It gave us that time to appreciate our friends, our family, and to make plans for the future, to change our lives. Whatever's not working in your life, now's the time to change it. You can have a better life. You can have the zestiest life you want. It's up to you. Once you decide, the whole world will pivot and make it happen with you.
Wow. I really appreciate that you're talking about the nature aspect. It's not always pretty, but it's, there's a purpose. I realized when COVID started, I never took time out for myself. It was always work, 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 event, 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 planning, playing music, whatever. And when COVID started, I gained a lot of weight, like other people have. And I started walking. Like this week, I did about 19,000 steps a day. A lot and there's forests and fields across the street. And
yeah, you posted the snakes. I know exactly where you were.
Snake one.
The snake bits.
Yeah. But I never realized the value of going out into nature and just meandering, no plan. Often I don't think about work. And you just look at all the little nature pieces and animals scurrying around and listening to the sounds and watching the trees blow, and your mind just wanders. I guess that's a form of meditation. I never meditated. Actually, I only meditated once in Japan, but
that's called a walking meditation, Jared. When you just walk and look around and be present.
Yeah. And I think that's really helped me for COVID. Yes, losing weight and getting into shape, which was the original purpose, but I realized there's so much more than that, because I come back after I shower, I feel so much more refreshed. I can really get down to work a few hours, and I maybe go for another walk. So that's a really great suggestion, Linda. Thank you. How can the community help you? What would be your ask?
Well, I love speaking with people. If anybody has an opportunity, I have several talks that I give. I can talk about any of the 7 secrets of women with zest, with women with zest, and they apply to men too.
Mhm.
I also have a talk called The 3 Keys to Juicy Effective Conversation Techniques Between Women and Men. That is really appealing to people who are in a male-dominated organization, and we don't know how to talk to each other. You know, we don't use language the same way. If we say a man is ambitious or a woman's ambitious, she's ambitious, he's ambitious, it's got a different tone to it. So we really want to watch our words. We stand differently. Men like to talk shoulder to shoulder. Go to any construction site and they're like this. Fishing bank, women, we like to talk face to face. So and what do we need? What do women need? Our wheel of needs is different than the needs that men have. And we need to know that. And once we know that, then we can appreciate that. So I would love to have someone call me, have a one-on-one call with me, and we'll chat and see how could I be of service in love and beauty with you and the people in your life.
Wow. Thank you. That's really nice. Yeah. Anything else you would like to add, Linda? We're getting near to the end of our segment today.
If you're in Ottawa or around and you see a little orange Volkswagen, it's mine.
That's a zesty little car.
No, I know. I have the big white luxury car and I cashed it in to go with my branding, and the Taylor Creek Volkswagen where I bought it. At their opening, they let me do a display of my books because they have never sold a car to match a book. But if you see me and you blow your horn at me, I will just wave because I assume I'm doing a good thing. And it makes people smile. I was stopped at a red light the other day and a woman on the back of a motorcycle, I put down my window and she said, "I love your car." People just look at it and they smile. It makes them full of joy. All I have to do is drive around and people are getting zested up.
Oh, I love it. Linda, so how can somebody get in touch with you then, please?
Linda@lindababulic.com. That's my email. It goes directly to me. My assistant doesn't handle those. I look at everything myself. And that's my website is lindababulic.com. If you're not clear on your dreams and your desires, I have a handout there for your listeners. And grab it today because I'm going to be changing it up. And it won't be that process anymore. And it's based on my shamanic teachings. So what do you want in the South, in the emotional, in the physical, in the mental, in the spiritual? And I use a compass to teach that. So you're welcome to that gift from me, lindababulic.com. And my email is linda@lindababulic.com.
Well, thank you so much, Linda. So today, folks, on the Pivoted Success podcast, we were joined by Linda Babulic from Zest Your Life. Linda, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's been a real honor.